Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Pash On podcast. Let's get started with your host, Brian Pash.
Hi, this is Brian Pash, and welcome to another podcast. On today's show, we have John Berna. He's the founder of Driven Data, and today we're going to explore the breakthrough innovations that their company is making in online marketing to create more efficient campaigns using dealers' first-party data, which was never really fully unlocked before. John, welcome to the show.
Brian, thank you so much for having me.
So, John, as we look at the opportunities that's before us to help dealers be more efficient with their marketing spend, before we get into the details, let's get a little background. Before you got into the automotive industry, what was your background?
Yep. So after I left the United States Navy, I worked in online education for about 6-7 years and worked in financial aid as well as business intelligence, and had the fortune of going through Six Sigma, becoming Six Sigma certified, and working with some really incredible people.
And John, after you built some amazing data warehouse platforms for your previous employer, you ended up in automotive. Now you're building software tools to help dealers. What was that transition like? How did you come to that realization that this area of the business needed the most attention?
Yeah, so I initially did automotive consulting, and did that for about a year. Worked at a single point Chevrolet dealership, and then worked at a large group. And at that large group, really the problem became very clear. Going from one store to over 10, the problem just magnified. And so trying to understand the truth and make effective decisions, manage a very complicated process, it became so clear to me that unifying all of this disparate data into one place just became the only path forward for me.
And John, as someone who understands your pain, as I developed
Yes.
VistaDash and understanding that dealer had so many data sources, your company has evolved, and we're going to talk about that evolution, but it started out as an analytics first company focused on unifying first party data. One of the things that is clear to me, even here in 2020, that dealers have so much data that are in silos or behind walled gardens. How did you break through and get all of the dealers' data in one place and unified so it was usable?
Yeah, so first of all, ROI bot and then VistaDash really was an inspiration for sure. So credit goes to you for being the first over the wall. Our approach fundamentally at the beginning was this philosophy of we're going to standardize all these integrations day one. And so I think that was really the first core step, because we couldn't do that later on. Designing an architecture that accommodated what we call as adapter patterns, individual integrations from each provider, we took those in and then brought them to a specific standard that captured as much value from each provider as reasonably possible, but also made it extremely consistent downstream so that we could have a consistent onboarding experience, and then also unlock some later features like tools that we use today.
And John, really what you developed was a customer data platform. And for other industries, it's very common for a customer data platform to be a tool that an agency would use to run marketing campaigns. But since DMS is often very, very restricted, since CRMs are often so dirty, it's really been a missing piece in the automotive industry to have a CDP. And what's different about Driven Data is you have the detailed data records, right? So you have each record in the DMS, you have each record in the CRM, you have each of the data paths into the dealership, and then you normalize them and apply data hygiene And that is no simple task. How come other companies have not been able to do it? Because this is the first robust platform that I've seen that have taken that detailed data record and really normalized it in a way that can be used.
Well, Brian, I obviously can't speak for other companies. I can tell you the challenges that we had to overcome. Number one, it took 7 years. And I don't think a lot of, the larger organizations would commit that amount of time and resources. We've spent, in development and just pure money, millions of dollars to get here. And that amount of time and the singular focus, I think that is probably our secret sauce. We also came into this with a clear vision. And oftentimes that vision gets distorted and jaded. And then you get, as you know, in the product development process in auto, we start chasing rabbit holes. Our clear vision was unifying everything, maximizing the value of the data only after we do that. So like, for example, with machine learning and some of the capabilities, it's really a function of how quality your architecture is, the quality of your architecture. So getting that right first unlocked everything else later.
And John, one of the things that I want to address on today's call is the confusion in the marketplace about using your own data to, make better marketing decisions. We've heard about Google changing its policy about cookies no longer being effective in tracking consumers. But what I've learned is that because you've created the industry's first customer data platform for automotive, you can take these rich customer records that have been through a hygiene process and actually push them up to Google and push them up to Facebook for matching so that you can have a very, very high correlation to a consumer who interacts with an ad on Facebook or an ad on Google and tie that back to the physical customer. Am I capturing that correctly?
Absolutely, Brian. I mean, that's probably the simplest I've ever heard it. I don't think I've said it better. I would say that, the cookie dilemma, our bet, back in 2018 was that was going to happen. And the signals were pretty clear. We tried attribution and failed in 2017 and failed miserably. 6 months, and we couldn't get what's called identity resolution. You called it matching, which is fundamentally the technology of associating somebody engaging with an ad to a sale, to a lead, or to a repair order. And because that was relying on cookies, it just really didn't fundamentally work. But this first party approach, there was other companies that were trying to solve this problem at the same time. And they had taken this approach of using first party data to do it. And that just seemed to be, especially with things like GDPR and all the privacy rules that are here and coming, the first party data really was the path forward, meaning the actual customer information, the first name, the last name, the email address, the phone number, from the dealership's own CRM, from their own DMS, that valuable data being unlocked.
And now, John, with driven data, which started as an analytics first or a data warehouse for automotive, now you're taking that data and being able to automate digital marketing campaigns on Facebook, on Instagram, and Google. And what was interesting for me to see as I reviewed your back end, that you're doing millions of automatic adjustments on campaigns because each night you're getting new data from the DMS, new data from the CRM. And what was mind-blowing is if somebody bought a car yesterday and that comes in, you have automatic suppression campaigns so that you're not spending money presenting someone who just bought a car on Google with an ad or on Facebook. What type of waste do you estimate that dealers have in their marketing budget because they are advertising to a recent transaction?
So this obviously started with our intuition. We assumed, and our assumption was, after a customer services or purchases their vehicle, they need things from the dealership. We know from the past that customers don't exactly follow down to the organic link, specifically in paid search. And then after you buy something online, I'm sure you've been served ads on Facebook or Instagram well after you bought it from the remarketing campaigns, right? And so we knew that that was a fundamental problem that existed not only in auto, but in other industries as well. And so we asked ourselves the question, how big is this problem? So we spent our own money. We duplicated the campaigns and targeted recent transactions over a rolling 30-day period just to see how big the problem was. And it was about 10% of ad spend was wasted on recent transactions. We did that one test, and that was enough for me because I didn't want to spend any of our more money on something that was just so evidently clear that it was going to be probably somewhere between 5 and maybe 15%. And if your store's name was Chicago Toyota, oh boy, then that's a much bigger problem with branded keyword search.
Absolutely. And one of the other things that I want to tie in, I recently had Alex Schneider, founder of Frickin' Tech, with their AlumaQuote product. And one of the reasons why we prompted to schedule this podcast when we did is that their product seems to be perfectly timed to this horrible pandemic that we have. People are working from home. Consumers are afraid of public. And what Alex and the team at Frickin' Tech had done is really change the rules on lead engagement, using technology to get 2x or 3x more engagement per lead that's submitted. And while his technology is amazing, what I found even more exciting was that you're tracking everything the consumer does inside of AlumaQuote and able to target those people with relevant ads. I thought that was really slick because most digital retailing tools, or what I'm going to call remote retailing tools, marketing is a forgotten task. We'll get to that in the future. This was built in and integrated. How is that helping dealers sell more cars?
Yeah, so the problem that we recognized was that there really wasn't accurate payments in ads. If you go back the last 60 years, we've really, as an industry, been pretty much lying to customers about what the payment of these cars are going to be, right? You see an ad, it's $150 a month, and the ad, you click on it, you go onto the search result page of the VDP, there's no mention of payment anywhere, it just says get e-price. And that's a very frustrating experience for the consumer on the marketing side. And then after they do engage, obviously there's this whole other problem of, the closing rate today is about 4%, 4.5% on internet leads. And so when Alex and I first started talking about how we could help each other, it was about a year and a half ago, we really saw a clear synergy. We had the analytics, we had the ability to deliver marketing, they had the ability to take and land this traffic as well as provide payment data back to us so that we could create a complete end-to-end solution from the first click that they see on the ad with the payment to the landing page with the payment matches to the first quality response, again, payment matching to the in-store experience, again, payment matching. And by doing that really together, connected in a connected way, end to end for the first time, we're seeing some incredible results.
Well, the third thing I wanted to talk about today, John, and I just want to refresh where we've been on today's podcast. Number one, the company started out with a clear mission to unify all of the data inside the dealership. For the first time, add a value to all the dealers' data, which had been siloed in many different places. And by creating a unified data warehouse with hygiene practices, you built the first customer data platform for automotive. Then you moved and said, well, hold on, this data is super valuable in creating better advertising, more relevant messaging. Let's get out and integrate into Facebook, into Google, and establish first-party marketing connections and tie all that ad spend back to people, not to campaigns. And then the third piece is attribution, and
Mm-hmm.
actually looking how much revenue was generated from these campaigns, how much profit, how many vehicles were sold. John, dealers have been asking for attribution reporting that they could understand for years. Do you believe that driven data has cracked that and has a reasonable, clear, and understandable way to show dealers how their marketing is impacting the business?
Yeah, I can confidently say that the answer to that question is yes. We have a very kind of clear persona as a company that we don't hype things that aren't real. And so we spent so long in this problem. We wanted to make sure that we got it before we said it was here. So when we announced in February that attribution is here, that was after about a 2-year period of development. And through many trials and tribulations, we were able to accurately do this at the lead level, the sale, as well as the repair order level, as well as the gross profit with each of those, to show dealerships truly what they're getting from the campaigns that we're running. And this isn't just campaigns to their database, this is all campaigns. So if we're running a campaign in an ad placement by drive time in their local market, not even from their database, we can tie that to a lead, sale, and repair order.
And John, dealers have heard this for years, so some of them are thinking, "Oh God, here's another person who tells me that they have attribution." But the reason for this is, number one, your data structures have taken all the data that the dealers have, merged it, unified it, applied data hygiene, upgrading with third-party sources so that you're getting very high match rates on Google and Facebook. So when consumers do with their Google anonymous ID or their Facebook anonymous ID, you can tie that back specifically because of the data structure that you built years ago.
Correct. And obviously in the reporting, it is anonymized, and that's how both of these super platforms operate. And when we looked at attribution as a product, we really didn't think of it as a product. We think of it as the end result of a long sequence of steps that we've already taken, as you pointed out. And so due to the nature of our architecture, we're able to do this in a way that is entirely automated. And so that automation to be able to produce this any day we want at the day level, that I feel gives us an edge to be able to tell the story and explain the real value that these campaigns create. And it puts us in a playing field with the dealership where it's honest and it's open, and we can have a real conversation about how we want to adjust it accordingly.
And John, I've been talking a little bit more about fixed operations marketing lately. We have the Fixed Ops Marketing Bootcamp, which is kicking off in Florida, and we're going to take that around the country. One of the comments you made was that the Driven Data platform has revolutionized fixed ops marketing because most dealers are using direct mail or email with very high costs or low engagement. And through platforms like Facebook, you could really reach existing customers and people who look like them. But you're seeing an amazing result, almost like Facebook is a rich mining field for service opportunities, service reminders. As a general statement, how would you compare your fixed ops marketing campaigns as a return on ad spend compared to what the dealer's doing now?
Yeah, so if I'm using direct mail, I'm spending $1,500 to $2,000 to reach 1,000 people, right? If I'm sending emails, my open rate is, maybe 8 to 12%. In some cases, smaller audiences, perhaps better. But the problem is just reaching the consumer. It's so expensive and there's so much waste in that process. And so our approach, because there's so much service data, Brian, like if you think about how many repair orders there are versus sales, it's usually a factor of 10 to 15, right? And so because there's so much data and the frequency of the transactions is so consistent, this really seemed like the perfect fit for this audience-based approach in not only Facebook, but also in Google. But speaking of Facebook first, we see $1 turn into $75 to $150 all the time. And customers really want to be able to engage through this platform in an experience that's simple. And so instead of making them go through an 18-step appointment form submission, we make it one click. They can save it to a wallet on their phone, show up, show the offer right to their service advisor, and then proceed with the repair.
Well, one of the things that demands even its own podcast is the reporting and the detailed data that you have within the Driven Data platform. But here's what I know. As much as you and I love data, it's difficult to get a general manager to spend the time to look at all the data. Obviously, a marketing manager would find tremendous value in looking through all the data. But if I had to be practical, I was most impressed with the automation on the marketing side, that even if a dealer didn't want to look at all the reports, you're going to ingest all their data. You're going to update it every day. You're going to normalize it, apply data hygiene, and launch some very, very targeted marketing campaigns for sales and service. That in itself replaces what I think is an equity mining tool, a service retention marketing tool, and a regular digital marketing tool. So it almost feels like, John, it's 3 products in one, based on data science and a tremendous amount of machine learning to come out with the optimal results.
Yeah, that's really what we looked at. And I think on the equity side, we identified in our data that about 50% of people that purchase a car today that have a trade, and say that trade is worth more than $2,500, they have negative equity, about 50% on both new and used. And so we really looked at equity as diminishing, customers having equity and doing trigger-based marketing based on that is really having diminishing value. And so we did all of our predictions and modeling off of the initial purchase versus the future purchases, based on the behavior, based on the individual CRM, sales, and service attributes of that consumer. And so by tying that together, predicting a date in the future that customer is likely to buy, establishing a window around that date, we can then start delivering marketing to that consumer at $6, $7 per 1,000 impressions to warm them up into potentially purchasing or servicing a vehicle with the dealership. And so, yes, on the equity side, we definitely wanted to provide a better way of reaching consumers, more efficient way of selling and servicing more cars. On the digital marketing side, it was about extending that into more traditional dig ad for awareness, consideration, action through the purchase funnel. And for service, again, it just seemed like a clear thing. We could take this audience and these audiences for service and help first-time service customers, customers that have serviced once but not in the last 9 months, as well as people that are predicted to be due for service, to keep them loyal.
Well, John, I want to congratulate you. The lack of data tools in automotive retail that are independent, Driven Data and VistaDash are 2 tools that come to mind, and it's hard for me to think of anybody else who's invested so much time and money in providing more actionable insights into the dealer's own data. But your platform is very impressive, and I'm sure that there's some dealers and dealer groups who are interested in the data piece and having more data-driven advertising campaigns. John, where would they go to get a demo, or is there a number they should call? What's the best way for them to see what you've built?
Yeah, so it's real simple. You can go to driven-data.com, driven-data.com, or you can call 888-659-5488. And in fact, you can just email me, John, Jon, at driven-data.com.
Well, John, thanks so much for spending time with me today. I always love to host people on my podcast that are shaking up the industry, that are building tools, processes, and technology to help dealers sell more cars in a digital age. For my listeners today, if this is the first time you've heard one of my podcasts, you should know that every Monday I publish a new podcast. The Pash On podcast can be found on the iTunes podcast library, Google Play Store, SoundCloud, or on the native Libsyn, Libsyn platform. My URL is brianpash.libsyn.com. And every Monday, we will bring to you another leader who's doing outstanding work in automotive retail. You should also know that we have two powerful conferences coming up that I host. In the spring, the Digital Marketing Strategies Conference. It's 11th year in the Napa Valley, and you can go to digitalmarketingstrategies.org to sign up your team. And in the fall, the Automotive Analytics and Attribution Summit, which is in beautiful Palm Beach, Florida. These two conferences bring out the best of the best, the smartest, the brightest, the most innovative dealers and technology companies to help move our industry forward. So thank you so much for listening to today's podcast, and we look forward to sharing time with you again in the future.